So good afternoon, welcome back from lunch. Please have your seat, take your seats. My name is Josh Cahill of APL and Lsic. I'm Rachel's deputy. This afternoon, we're gonna be starting with a look at the Lsic focus group reports. The focus group leads are gonna give us kind of a little bit of a synopsis of the year, their reflections on it, and their potential goals that they're gonna be thinking about moving forward. These goals annually need to be okayed by the executive committee. So that right now they're just what they're thinking moving forward, and this is your chance to influence what those goals might be. Of course, you may have done that during the monthly focus group meetings, but here it's called, we end up having crosstalk, basically, is the way the facilitators like to put it. So each lead will have 8 minutes to speak. We'll try to fit in a question. If we don't get a question for a particular facilitator, we'll open it up to the panel at large. We're going to start with excavation and construction. Dr. Athonu, Chatterjee.
There it is. Good afternoon. Thank you, Josh. So as Josh mentioned, my name is Athonu Chatterjee, and I am leading the excavation and construction focus group out here at APL, Lsic APL ENC focus group. So I'm going to give you a brief progress report on what we have been doing in 21-22, and introduction to our focus group, what we do for those who don't know about it, and a brief preview of what we're going to do in 2022. This way. There you go. So this is our focus group. Our mandate is to assist NASA in developing technologies that enable affordable, robust, autonomous or semi-autonomous construction of infrastructure on the lunar surface. Till last week, we had 831 members. We have grown tremendously, as you have seen, since last May. This time, we had around 500 members. So Lsic is growing in a nutshell. And just to give you a preview of our logistics, we have our monthly meetings on the 4th Wednesday of every month at 2 to 3 p.m. These are very popular meetings, as you will see in a few slides. We have our mailing list, listserv mailing list, and quite a few of you must be receiving emails from me on that mailing list. We have our website, the Lsic website, and Confluence Wiki, which is a great resource for collaboration, publicity, and we also have a who's who on the wiki where you can put in your details and contact information. We want to maintain it like a yellow pages for ENC activities. Our NASA lead, from whom you heard this morning, is Dr. Mark Hilberger. And we also have ENC subgroups. We have formed 4 subgroups, one on autonomy, maintenance, site planning, and site prep. Another subgroup on additive manufacturing and raw materials, then on horizontal and vertical construction and outfitting. The idea of having these subgroups is to streamline the discussion as we are growing in size and volume. So in a nutshell, this is our focus group's technical areas. We want to build infrastructure. We want to enhance introduction. Our broad goal is to enhance interaction between industry, NASA, and academia, and to help NASA in technical areas. Some of the areas we're focusing on right now are on the infrastructure front, landing and launch pads, habitats, both ISRU in situ habitats and deployable habitats, class 2 kind of habitats, roads, berms, blast shields, and so on. On the technology front, additive construction, autonomous construction, and then one area we want to really focus on is assembly technologies. We want to take a holistic look at assembly technologies for habitats, blast shield, towers, excavation and construction tools, and another area we want to venture into is lunar manufacturing processes. And this came out from our regulatory metals workshop we had a couple of months ago. And also, as you heard from ISRU folks, they're looking more and more into the possibility of generating metal, in situ metal on the lunar surface. In situ repair and outfitting are other areas we are interested in too. So this is the 21-22 Lsic activities snapshot. So this is the Lsic activities snapshot. We also do work on other fronts like systems integration tasks. So we have had monthly meetings. Average attendance has been close to 100, 117. It has been steadily growing from 74 to 143, as you see there. We're also organizing joint meetings with other focus groups. We held 3 workshops, one on NASA's ENC technology needs and launch and LLP launch and land pads. We had a very successful workshop on maintenance and repair, and then a regolith to rebar metals workshop a couple of months ago. It was a joint workshop held with ISRU. And as I mentioned, we have Confluence Wiki, Who's Who, and Conversations and Resources. And what you see on the side is kind of a collage of the kind of speakers we have. We have had speakers from startup industries like space initiatives, big players like Bechtel, and of course, speakers from NASA and other from like space architecture from Astroport Space Technologies. So if you're interested in participating in these monthly meetings, just send me an email. So coming to the 21-22 annual goal, last year at this time, we said we're going to look at some of the less fancy stuff, lunar infrastructure maintenance, repair, and outfitting, while we are deeply steeped into developing technologies and infrastructures. We want to look at other important aspects, maintenance, repair, and outfitting. So what have we done in this regard? So this is a brief report card, progress card. We held a workshop in October focusing on maintenance and repair. I'm going to talk about it in a slide or two. We've had a regolith to rebar metals workshop focusing on supply and demand of in situ derived metals. Lunar metal manufacturing is one theme that came out of that workshop. We are also having close interactions with the Modular Open Systems Architecture MOSA working group. You heard about it yesterday. And also we're focusing more and more on joint workshop monthly meetings with other focus groups like the one with dust mitigation we had last month, focusing on wear and abrasion resulting from dust and dust-tolerant mechanisms. So ENC workshop was held last year, August, and this was, the agenda was basically looking at NASA's technology assessment of ENC capability needs and technology gaps. And also we had a panel discussion on landing and launch pad from NASA and Dynetics. So the main takeaway, and this is a common theme, is that the community needs more requirements from NASA. NASA has to be more proactive in expressing and doling out requirements, especially for initial infrastructure. Also, community needs more information on power requirements and initial power infrastructure. And another common thing that comes out of our Lsic thing is interaction is NASA should leverage technologies developed by autonomous construction industries and other high TRL technologies, which is already out there in the autonomous construction industry, equipment manufacturing industry. And that is something NASA should actively look to leverage. And the community is also very desirous of participating in lunar surface demos like the CLIPS mission. Maintenance and repair workshop we had last year, and one important takeaway was more work needs to be done in the area of site planning and preparation to understand preventive and predictive maintenance consideration. And you heard about it a little bit this morning also from Mark. And also the community wants to know what level of autonomy is really required for maintenance and repair. And this is an area that needs an answer. Robotics operations are still limited for lunar applications, so more investment is needed in this regard. And some of the other things that came out under ENC equipment and processes, multifunctional autonomous construction machines, that is an area NASA should look into. And also under requirements, as I mentioned, the community needs more requirements from NASA. NASA has to work more on working on requirements, especially for the initial infrastructure, and predictive, preventable maintenance, and more information on that. So another workshop we had 2 months ago was regolith to rebar metals workshop. I will let Karl speak more about it.
1 minute.
Thank you. So, and on the ENC side, what I can say is that one of the big takeaways was we need a lunar commercialization study, preferably led by NASA, something like LEO commercialization study that was done in the past decade, and also develop more lunar metals manufacturing processes. So these are the overall findings. The most important one, in the interest of time, is NASA should bring in industry as soon as possible for construction equipment and autonomous construction. Lunar surface missions are critical. Industry wants to be a part of it and fund more technology development in the area of site survey and site preparation and assembly of initial infrastructure for Class 2 construction. And a lunar surface commercialization study is needed. Finally, for 2022 and 2023, we want to continue to have our monthly meetings and workshops. We'd like to organize a thematic workshop focusing on autonomous construction technologies for lunar ENC, and also a follow-up to regulatory rebar metals workshop we had 2 months ago. And we want to keep working on our current goal of maintenance, repair, and spare parts, hopefully bringing in lunar manufacturing technologies into this. And also, as I said, the industry is very desirous of, the community is very desirous of contributing to ENC-related activities for lunar surface demo missions. And this is something we would like to facilitate. Thank you.
Thank you, Athonu. To conserve time, we're going to move on to the next one, and we'll try to grab a question for you a little bit later. Our next speaker is Dr. Karl Hibbitts. He is the focus group lead for in situ resource utilization. There you go.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so I'll just launch right into it. ISRU participation, we've had about, say, gone from about 50% of industry to about 45% of our attendees are from industry, and about 30% academics and 25% are government. So in general, we have about 100 and so participants every month in meetings, and we have about 1,000 people signed up for it. So a lot of people get emails, and about a tenth of them actually participate. So we encourage everybody to participate as much as you want, but that's about normal. Okay, so pretty good outreach, and we're working with other focus groups as well. A lot of synergy. We want to break down the these so-called stovepipes between each other. Okay, so our goals. I want to jump right into this. What are our goals? The initial goals are basically look at the bold part, the top sentence. Understand the H2 and O2 as well as metals. They can be extracted from the surface. And so we've been focusing on enabling industry to develop technology for the extraction of these resources. With these numbers provided by a supply and demand workshop that we hosted about 2 years ago, and consistent with previous NASA numbers of tens to hundreds of metric tons per year, ultimately 100 metric tons per year, start about 10 to 15. Okay, so our goals were initially and still remain to be, and you see in the next slide, connect focus group technology ideas with NASA. That is really the Lsic thing that we do. And number two, one of our goals was to provide NASA an assessment of the effectiveness of the current funding approach. And we had a study on that and gave a small report up to STMD on that several of you participated in. And overall, effective positive impact on community collaborations, which means NASA, industry, nonprofits, academia. And I think we're making pretty good progress on that based off the attendance that we have. And there we go. So I believe we went through each of these. So for the focus group ones, provide input to NASA, participating in surveys, which I'll go through a little bit on that, and participating in reports. So I encourage everybody when we have surveys and reports that we do and the breakout sessions, participate as much as you can, because this does affect NASA. We provide this information up to NASA in terms of reports. Okay. The more you participate, the more effect you will have. And currently our subgroups are organized this way, as you can see here. They occur at the end of our meetings. So meetings generally last about 40 minutes for each month, and then we have another 40 minutes for the breakout groups. That way you aren't inundated with multiple Zoom meetings all the time, though there are additional meetings that you can hold outside of that. So key to what we've been hearing today already and yesterday, water ice resources, evaluation, and recovery. I prefer that to prospecting because resource evaluation is really what we're talking about doing. This is a focus on one of our breakout groups, evaluating the information needed about this potential water ice resource. Is it a reserve? What constitutes a reserve? What do we need to do to obtain that information? Related to that is O2 extraction and metal extraction. Metal extraction is somewhat new. There was recently a workshop we held that Athonu talked about, and I'll mention briefly. Technical approaches for consideration for the extraction of this. So here, there are technical barriers or challenges related to O2 extraction that need to be overcome, and metal extraction as well. And so breakout session focuses on this. Value network mapping is connecting industry and NASA and industry to industry for how to make a business case out of this, a sustained business model out of ISRU. It's gone, I think, very well, and I encourage you to be involved with that. Related to presentations earlier and started by the power group, I believe it was, is the interoperability maintenance by design, or MOSA, something that's clearly cross-focus group and cross-technology, so we have a breakout session here as part of that. So, summary of our regolith rebar metals workshop. A lot of words here, but basically, we've just begun. Right? We have a lot of work to do in this area, both in terms of the technology for the extraction of metals from the regolith, but also in the use of it, and actually a system design for how do you go from the metal to a product and who's going to use it and the whole value chain aspect of it. So we just started talking about it at this meeting February 23rd, and there's a breakout session this afternoon where we'll continue to talk about it, perhaps talk about the next step, not rebar or regolith rebar, perhaps rebar to roadways. What do we do with the metal after we extract it from the surface? All right, so one of the other things we had was a facilities report, and this is a bit of an eye chart, but the key takeaway from this is that there were only a few participants, about 16. I suppose those 16 who participated were the ones who actually needed some improvement in the availability of facilities, and that's the feedback we got, which is quite valuable. The takeaway generally is that we need to provide better access or better information on the availability of facilities and their natures and understand more what the community wants. And we'll probably have another facilities survey at some time in the future. If you think that's actually of value, send me an email and we'll probably go ahead and do it. So here's an opportunity to directly impact the ISRU focus group with your desires. Send me emails if you want to see this continue. All right, overall findings gleaned from our focus group meetings, breakout sessions, et cetera, as Athonu said, maybe a little bit self-serving, but we really think it's true that the focus groups on Lsic really does provide value to the community. We get a lot of feedback both ways. All right, so industry is able to network, learn about NASA needs for ISRU technology development, gain insights, designing operations on the moon, and provide feedback back and forth to NASA and from NASA, to industry and from industry. That's our goal. The more you get involved, the more that works. Also, academia and nonprofits are able to share the latest research results and insights into the nature of the moon, as well as the technology they're developing that can be implemented into future development. So we want to continue to encourage academia participation. We're about, 25%, and a little bit more is always good, because that's a feedstock to industry. Industry then develops a technology that's deployed on the surface of the moon. Okay. The next one is obvious, right? So industry, NASA, academia, nonprofits have significant technology capabilities in water ice and O2 extraction. That with the proper system integration approach we've been hearing about today, everything's a system problem, right? With the right system integration approach, we'll have a strong likelihood of enabling ISRU on the moon. And our goal is to enable that to happen, enable you to make that happen. So how to do that? Our draft goals for this, right, coming up, I believe. Keep two of them, keep connecting you guys with each other, affect a positive impact on community collaborations, and make progress on enabling the development of these technologies for systems of water ice and O2 extraction, as well as metal extraction, which is something new, through hosting meetings, workshops, breakout sessions, building collaboration, sharing knowledge, i.e. enabling you to develop these technologies. All right, so get involved, and you can see you're already involved, you're here, so you probably already have all this information, but just in case you don't, it's up here on the screen. You can always revert to sending me an email. And that is it. Thank you.
Karl, we actually have time for a question, if you'd like to.
I'll be happy to.
So we have a question here on Slido, and I saw one person raising their hand. We're taking questions through Slido, so there's a barcode in your program that you can take. The question we have here, Karl, is do you have information to share about the financial break-even points for ISRU facility setup and utilization versus direct earth delivery of needed materials?
Wow.
That was one of your specifics.
Short answer, no. But that would be a great discussion to have on the value network, value mapping group right there. And if you want, we can have this part of the discussion with the network breakout on the regular rebar or rebar to roadway discussion. We can take that in that direction too if you want.
Thanks. If anybody wants to answer here, they're free to, but I think we can move along. Thanks. Okay, our next speaker for Extreme Access is Dr. Angela Stickle.
Yep, gonna have to bring it down a little.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So, I get to control it, right? So, hi, I'm Angela. I haven't met you yet. I'm the lead facilitator for Extreme Access. A bunch of the rest of the EA team is in the room, and when I get to the side, you're all gonna stand up and wave, because they do awesome work for the consortium and also for the other tasks that we have with LSII. So the EA group is really focused on identifying technology gaps for robotic access, navigation, and exploration of the moon, both the surface and the subsurface, especially places that were sort of previously really hard to get to or currently hard to get to, so that we can get there and stay there and have continuous access wherever we want it, whenever we want it. We have a great group of folks on the team. So here at APL, I think everyone's in the room or were in the room. So we have Sarah Withy, who you've probably seen on Telecons, who's head of our PNT subgroup and also helps with coordinating technology spotlights. Alice Kokoros is leading up the subgroup coordination and strategy. And we have Charles Brothers, Aparna Srinivasan, and Stacey Tang, who are members of the team helping with a lot of various tasks and analysis. So stand up and wave. I'm not gonna move on until you do. So thanks guys for all your help. If you haven't had a chance to meet them yet, they are here for the day. So seek them out. And we have a couple of folks at NASA on our team too who are helping out. We have Terry Fong and Josh Melling, who are ASR and robotics technical leads at NASA. We currently have 650-ish registered participants in the EA focus group. And I think our listserv is bigger than that. So if you get our emails and aren't yet registered, talk to Andrea, please. And we have on average about 50 people at our monthly telecons. They occur on the second Thursday of every month at 3 p.m. if you are interested in joining us. And like everyone else, you can find us on the website and the wiki and mailing list. So in general, our vision for this group is sort of build up the community that specializes in all of the technologies needed to access things. And so this is a very broad charge. So we talk a lot about different types of technology that are critical for accessing locations on the moon, navigating them, and communicating from where you are. We have our monthly meetings that feature sort of a wide variety of discussions. We tend to have guest speakers. We call them technology spotlights at every meeting. We usually have 1 to 2 speakers, and that's members of the community. So if you're interested in building up your network or providing new information about what you're working on, please reach out and let us know. We love to hear what you're doing. We have identified specific technology-themed subgroups, which I'll talk about in a moment, to really allow you to build your networks and have sort of these more focused technological conversations. Like Athonu said, these are sort of broad things. We want to be able to focus and get into the details, so we have these sort of technology-focused subgroups as well. Like the other groups, we do hold workshops and themed telecons and provide some networking opportunities. And so if there's anything that you would like us to do and we aren't currently doing, let us know. We would like to be a good resource and facilitate good discussions for you all. The subgroups are led by members of the community. And so thank you to all of our subgroup leads. We really, really appreciate your help and your dedication to continuing these conversations. And they also can, have a variety of guest speakers, sort of guided discussion and brainstorming things, and are really integral in helping us develop feedback and recommendations to NASA. So that's where a lot of our nitty-gritty conversations happen and where a lot of the feedback from you can kind of get passed up to NASA. With that, our goal last year is here. We wanted to help build up the community and develop collaborative relationships, which I think, as Karl said, it's a little self-serving, but I think we've done a pretty decent job of that. And then the other half of it was to really take a look at 2 specific environments that are tricky, but of interest in lunar exploration. and look for specific technology gaps and needs, prioritize development timelines, and look at sort of potential general roadmaps for getting there. And so we looked at PSRs and lunar lava pits, lunar pits and lava tubes, and asked all of our subgroups to sort of talk about these and identify specific things that would be challenges or technology gaps or needs. And so we did this throughout the year, kind of sprinkled these conversations in and out. And through all of those discussions, we did ask the groups to write up a small little summary white paper thing for us. And we're right in that time. They've all kind of sent those to us now. And we're in that digesting the recommendation period. And all of those white papers are going to be sort of compiled. We're going to send them on to NASA. So this is really the chance where, direct feedback of your needs and the things that you think would make sense and enable your technology development can get, given directly to NASA. And we'll make all of those public on the wiki too. So just as a eye chart for you to get a little bit of a sense, we had 4 subgroups that identified critical things that they saw as gaps or needs or technology that really needed to be developed in order to access lunar pits and PSRs. I'm not going to read these to you. These will be up on the website. I just wanted to put them up here as an example that I think I'm really happy with how the subgroups are going. I'm really happy with the way that they provide a chance for you all to have your ideas kind of percolate and be heard, and sort of recommendations that come out of them, I think, can be really actionable and fed upwards up the chain to see how we can make lunar exploration a little bit better and easier for all of us. So as I said, we have sort of 4 subgroups right now. We have a subgroup that focuses on position, navigation, and timing technology, one that focuses on communications technology, mobility technology. These are still pretty broad, but they're a little less broad than access. So, and we do also have one that talks about TRN technology, and that's a little bit more ad hoc, kind of meets as needed. And every one of our subgroups has a dedicated space on the EA Wiki page. And most of the meeting notes and sometimes recordings and things are there. So go check that out if you're curious. That's where we'll be posting the summaries of these white papers. For next year, we want to kind of build on and sort of further develop the relationships that we have sort of been hopefully fostering among the members and sort of expand that into other focus areas. So one of the things that comes up a lot is that, we provide access technology and many of the driving requirements come from other focus groups. And you heard some of this morning, right? ISRU and Excavation and Construction really drive a lot of our requirements. And so in the next year, we're gonna sort of help facilitate some of those conversations to really talk about, how, what sorts of access needs do you need to enable ISRU and excavation? What sorts of autonomy needs do you need? What are the different technology gaps, and how can we kind of meet in the middle for that?
1 minute.
Perfect. So that's our goal for next year. We're going to do this through some workshops and sort of crosstalks. So if you've been going to any of the focus group monthlies, we have these crosstalks where multiple groups meet to try to really talk about these in more detail and kind of see what we need to do to move forward. And I think that's it.
We do have one question. Do you have any LSAC workshops that are on the horizon that you may want to speak towards? And how are these actually arranged? Are they arranged with NASA or the community more?
Yeah, we do actually have a workshop. So Jamie and I are planning a workshop, and our teams are planning a workshop for next month called Designing for the Extremes. And I think Jamie's going to talk a little bit about it. She has a bullet on one of her slides, so I won't steal her thunder too badly. But these are arranged. We hear we think about what you guys are talking about, what you need to do, what questions you're asking, and we try to design workshops to address those. So we do work with NASA to kind of schedule them and figure out if there are appropriate speakers that they suggest, and then we go from there.
Great, thanks. Let's thank Angela. Okay, our next speaker is Dr. Jamie Porter. for the Extreme Environments Focus Group. Whenever you're ready.
Hello. I like to call myself the newbie of the group, even though Nikki and Carol say I can't say that anymore. I will remain new until they pick someone that comes after me. That's the way I get away with stuff. So I am Jamie Porter. I am a little different than everybody else as a facilitator. I come from more of the engineering side. So I take a different way of looking at some of these things. So we've changed a little bit. Before me was Ben Grehagen, who is doing more of some of our applications, but I took over the facilitator role this year. So before I tell you about my dream team, who I love dearly, I have them on a later slide, I want to talk about a little bit about EE in general. So we have close to 900 registered participants now. We usually have about 100 people at our meetings, but we're so diverse. We have so many things to talk about, right? Environments is very vague. So basically, we're everything. Everybody needs us to build. Everybody needs us to survive. Everybody's interested in our topics, which I think is an amazing place to be in. If you want to know more about the people who come to our meetings every month, we do have Who's Who in EE on our website. If you are part of EE and you're not on there, which I think I'm not now, and I feel very guilty, I should put myself on the Who's Who in EE now that I'm reading it. It's a really good tool, and I've had people come and say, oh, you know, I was looking for somebody who was an expert in this, and I went and looked and they were on there. So it's a really good way to get yourself out there. I also really like how our demographics are spreading this year. I looked at last year and we were really looking at a way to pull in more academia, and we did. We were 50% industry and now we're 40, and we have more academics coming in, which is really a balance that I wanted to see. So we're happy with the direction we're going in. So progress over the last year. The goals that were put up for last year, one was to evaluate capabilities and gaps related to technology, observation, simulation, and testing maturation for one or more prioritized lunar surface environments in a white paper. What we did to actually progress on this is we have very active subgroups that I'll talk about in a minute. And our subgroups did multi-month efforts to discuss these technology and software gaps. We're actually still kind of at the tail end of it. We're going to be tying it up soon. But it's been a really good exercise to try to figure out, is it really data? Is it simulation? Is it testing? Where are these gaps really for the environment standpoint? We did kind of start doing these crosstalks, which I love dearly, because I think when I think of extreme environments, we're guilty sometimes of thinking of one thing at a time, right? You can't think about just radiation. You can't think about just about plasma. You have to think about things together because they affect each other. Temperature affects certain things. So these crosstalks are really bringing our subgroups along with some of our other groups together to have these conversations really from a design aspect for concerns from the environment that are going to affect each other. So the second goal was to publish a technology maturation guide relevant to one or more EE groups. So 3 out of 5 of our subgroups actually have some pretty advanced resource guides that they've put on Confluence. And I'm hoping that we can keep building those forward. So those are out there in the world. If you get on Confluence, you will be able to access those. And we've also got some really good compliments about people thinking they were very useful. So this is part of the team. These are my fantastic subgroup leads. I think we have 3 here in person today. We have Dr. Lawrence Halbrin, who is from my alma mater, and he focuses on the radiation environment, and that is the human aspect and how they affect electronics. So we're looking at ionizing radiation for that subgroup. Regolith and surface interface is Melissa Roth here today, and she does an excellent job of writing the line between regolith and dust, because if you talk to us, we cross that line a lot. We got to let Jorge take care of that, but it is a fine line, and we try to stay on the good side of it. But she has a very active subgroup and has one of the resource guides that we were talking about. Space weather plasma environment is Justin Licker. He's an APLer, and that one's interesting because that's a niche. A lot of people, when we start talking about charging effects and things like that, they're very interested, but there's not a lot of people that do it. Thermal and illumination environment is Dr. Hassan Chandori, and he has really been focusing on specific technologies lately and how those need to progress past certain TRL levels. And then vacuum and excavator environment, the testing, Stephen is here as well. And his guide has been fantastic, and he has an active subgroup that's really helping to put down some guidelines to how we should be doing our vacuum testing. So the crosstalks we've done so far, we heard a lot about rad-hard electronics earlier, which makes me happy because it's near and dear to my heart. But key takeaways from that, we did it joint with power. It was a great meeting, and really in the conversations, some of the takeaways were, I mean, we're looking at finding stuff that's 99% reliable for a minimum of 10 years. It's a long time, and especially when we're saying minimum. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done to get to that point. And on top of that, we really feel like extreme environments help here. Our focus is really defining what the environment is, how we should test it, and the pass-fail criteria. So we're going to work together and moving forward on that one. We had one recently, plasma interactions with lunar regolith and dust with Jorge's group. And that one, there was a clear need for better modeling and experimental work in the dust, plasma, regolith, how those interact with each other. And we did see gaps coming from rates and really tri-boat charging, which is a really big one that we talked about pretty heavily. And we have an upcoming crosstalk that Anu talked about briefly in July, where we're going to cover topics related to using regolith as a radiation shield. We've talked about it a lot, but we're really going to dig into what kind of properties the modelers are looking for to do that work. How is this affecting our machinery? So that's going to be another good one. That's going to come up in July. So overall findings, since we have so many different topics we talk about in extreme environments, I kind of had a bullet for each one of our subgroups because it felt like it was a little bit more inclusive than just to say one thing. But what you see when you read this one, there's a common thread, is testing. As I asked for this from them, I said, you know, y'all kind of said, hey guys, it would be nice to have guidelines on testing. How should we do this testing? What is vacuum in space? What is an acceptable vacuum level? You know, how are we going to do this? Because people are coming in very new and they're wondering how we do this, and we want to be that guide. So draft goals going forward. Like I said, a big thing for us is we're cross-cutting engineering. We're support. We are the people that give you what you need to build and mature your designs. And that's something we want to do by our workshops, references, crosstalks. We want to be there to help you do that design maturation. And then our second goal is we want to publish those resource guides that we've been working on and start working on our other subgroups to do those as well. The workshop coming up that we talked about, we're really going to be looking at the design aspect of extreme access and EE is, yeah, this is the environment, but tell me what effects of the environment I need to be worrying about if I'm in a permanent shadow region versus not. Because ultimately, I can tell you a temperature and you don't know what to do with it. But if I tell you what that temperature does to your materials, that's when you start freaking out. That's what we're going to talk about at that meeting. And this is our team here. They're, I think, all in this room. Again, you can always reach out to me, reach out to anybody on this team if you want to be part of EE or if you had some really good things for us to add. And please CC Andrea on everything because she's better than me on email. And if I don't do it, she will yell at me appropriately. And Kevin is online today. He wasn't able to be here today. That's all.
We have one question on Slido. I keep on wanting to call it Sligo, I guess for Sligo Creek, but you know, for Slido. Do you have any initial thoughts on the envisioned futures for the thermal, lunar thermal for the envisioned futures? Any initial thoughts on envisioned futures for thermal that NASA?
I don't. I will be honest that is not my wheelhouse at all, but I will say that thermal, we're going to be taking a new approach to how we do our thermal subgroup coming up in the next month. And we're going to be really digging into some solicitations that we've seen out there to kind of say, do we think this is going the right direction? Do we think we're putting too hard of extremes on thermal? Are we over-engineering this? So that is one aspect that we're going to start digging into is, do we think the right information? We've seen some temperatures that are used on certain things that we think, that one's really, I don't think that's really even relevant. And so those are the conversations we really want to have with the community. Yeah. You want to hear? Oh, okay, and in the Vision Future Fire side, you're going to see that as well.
All right, thank you. Let's thank Dr. Porter. Okay, moving along, our next speaker is Dr. Jorge Nunez. He's our dust mitigation lead facilitator. Whenever you're ready, Jorge.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my name is Jorge Nunez, and I am the lead facilitator for the Dust Mitigation Focus Group. So we're really excited. So here is our team, which consists of, is led now by Dr. Kristen John, who's now the technical integration manager for dust mitigation. And so she's taken the role after Michael Johansson, who held that role for the past few years. So unfortunately, Kristen couldn't be with us this time around. But we also have Dr. Lindsay Tollist, Sarah Hasanain, Mark Perry, and Richard Miller, who are contributing both in not only in the focus group area, so helping with our Confluence page and subgroups, but also on the integration side, systems integration side as well, and providing some of the feedback that taking the inputs that you all provide and feeding that to NASA. So our focus group, as the name says, dust mitigation, we're really focusing on technologies, to help address the issues with dust and how to mitigate that. And of course, focusing sort of on gaps that are needed for the technology development, and of course, harnessing the power of the community, and expertise really to help not only help identify solutions, what are the latest gaps, and of course, how we can help move that technology forward. And so we meet every third Thursday of the month. And of course, we really encourage folks to join in. Our group has been steadily growing with now, we have over 770 people that participate in the focus group, or at least receive our emails and announcements. And of course, our monthly attendance has been growing steadily, almost, I think, at least 10, 20% growth over the last year. So now we have about 67 people as an average attendance. And of course, the proportion is really great because we have a really nice mix of both academia, government, industry participation, and of course also a smaller sliver on nonprofits, but it's really great. One of the goals as we established this focus group, is really to bring collaborations between academia, industry, and of course like government with like NASA, to start talking and start fostering collaborations. And so we do have a Confluence page, with a wiki, and of course also a who's page, because one of the biggest things, over the last year, people asking us like, who do I talk to about this technology? Or I'm concerned about, dust or what thing. And so we established this who's page so that we can help, point to somebody and say, hey, this person is working on this kind of technology. Okay, so when we look at dust, dust, just like extreme environments, it encompasses so many areas, So we're looking at not only things on the surface, surface operations, whether it's spacesuits, robotic systems, habitats, Also during ascent and landing, so systems, with and the plumes that are generated, everything kicks up dust we want to try to mitigate, and of course, some of that dust makes it all the way up to space, and of course can, and as with the Artemis missions, when they're on their way back, they're going to bring some dust with them, and so that also affects, for example, could potentially impact on gateways. So with dust, we're looking at over the entire gamut, and we have to take sort of this holistic, integrated strategy approach, because we can't just focus on one specific area because it's all intertwined. Okay, so with our previous goal, so our current goal, we were looking at, to enable to sustainable presence on the moon, trying to understand the needs and gaps in dust mitigation, what kind of recommendations we can make based on the input from folks, and of course, how we can help field some of that technology, and especially how we can infuse these dust mitigation technology, these investments that have been made into these larger architecture systems, because that's how that dust mitigation technology are going to be of benefit to enabling the exploration of the moon. And so we had these objectives, right? Not only building our community, right, which we have done, and it's still growing, and we welcome those who have not been involved but are interested just in learning of what's going on. We invite you to join us. We also worked, for example, with workshops and some of our focus groups, right, looking at specific technologies area, right, and how to testing and maturation capabilities, kind of gaps are there, and of course, providing some recommendations. And so we've taken some of the inputs that we've had some previous workshops, as well as some of the focus groups, and fed that to NASA directly. And we've seen that in some of the latest calls that have been coming out. Okay, so for dust mitigation, as just like EE, we have a lot of subgroups, right? Because it's such a big umbrella. So we have one focused on materials and surface coatings, and that includes whether it's optical systems, right? So like lenses, viewports, solar panels, thermal surfaces like radiators, seals, soft goods, and fabrics. So thinking of like spacesuits, right? Seals, like whether you're looking at connectors, interfaces, mechanisms, right? So mechanisms, there's a big, right? We're talking about rover systems, robotic, even rovers for excavation, right? All of those systems use mechanisms. Monitoring filtration, right? So we need to make sure that we keep the dust load inside the habitat low, because as we learn, see this picture down there with Gene, that's here on the bottom right, it's a picture of Gene Cernan, and you see them, they just completely covered in dust, right? And that not only some of the feedback, right, that they provided was not only is that dust that, adheres, but it irritated the eyes. It also irritated the lungs as well, right? So it is a hazard that we really need to try to address. Modeling as well, right? So whether it's plume modeling from like ejecta, right? Especially if now we're looking at larger systems, landing systems with like HLS, but also inside the cabin, surface modification. Yep. Okay, and then isolation. And so some of the highlights, right? We've done a lot of theme focus group meetings on specific topics, whether it's connectors. We've also done extended sort of meetings, right? So in specific technologies or topics like the vertical solar array technology done with EE and surface power, surface plasma interaction like Jamie had talked about, and also like dust tolerant systems with excavation and construction. We also had special events. So for example, NASA came out in October with these NASA standards documents. So some, standards for how to test with dusty environments. And that's really something really useful for the community. Then of course, like big idea challenges where it was focused on dust mitigation. And we had a meeting focused on those presentations, really innovative solutions, technologies that have been developed by these academic teams, university teams, which was fantastic. And then of course we had some networking events focused on PRISM and CLIPS. Okay, so findings. So I'm not gonna go through these detail, but right, so one, focus groups are incredibly valuable to get people talking. Dust is a major concern that we really need to continue addressing and investing. And so especially bringing technology developers and system developers together is going to be critical in order to incorporate some of these advanced technologies that are being invested and how we can address some of those issues that are like highlighted, for example, in some of the earlier presentations. And then of course, in terms of challenges and needs, right, is how do we, we can't eliminate dust. So we need to establish tolerances of what is enough, right? Is it dirty enough? And then of course, right, pathways for integrating these technologies, as well as how to, maybe some demonstrations, more in situ demonstrations with these technologies. So next steps, right? We're gonna continue with our goal, and it's continue focus meetings, expanding our networking collaborations, bring these technology developers and external providers, how to more focus group and joint meetings, right? To see, we've had some really great cross-pollination with these other focus areas and understanding what are their needs, but also helping identify, have you thought about these areas? These systems are gonna be impacted by dust. And then of course, expanding the work done by our dust mitigation subgroups. And so here's how you can get involved. Join, sign up, and if you have any issues, our Andrea or I can help you get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have time for questions right now, but if we have time after Wes, we can take the chance. Our next speaker is for Surface Power Focus Group, Dr. Wesley Fuhrman. Whenever you're ready.
Not quite tall enough to see that, but that's fine. All right, yeah, so I'm Wes Fuhrman, so I'm the Surface Power Focus Lead. And, great, clicker works. So our Surface Power Focus Group is here. We've got about a little bit more than 800 registered participants. Our average, I don't have it up there, but it's actually tied with ISRU at 126 average per month. So I'm really happy about how everybody seems to come together, and I think that I can't really take credit for that because it's really, a lot of that is due to all of the joint meetings, all of the ways that we're communicating with the other focus groups. Yeah, so you can see we've got a heavy industry participation in our focus group, and I think that that's really great to get a picture of what's happening outside of NASA, see who's going to be really starting off that value chain by providing power on the future lunar surface economy. So we've had the absolute pleasure to work with John Scott as our point of contact on the NASA side. We've also got a wonderful team at APL with Sam Andrade, Jody Burtis, James Mistandria, Julie Peck, and Sean Young. We've got James a little bit blued out there because he's also working a lot on the modular open systems approach and the interoperability working group. But we still like to claim him. So our meetings are fourth Thursday of every month. Please come. I take a lot of pride and I'm very happy to know that we coordinate very well with John. He's been very transparent and present in all those meetings. So it's a great place for you to communicate directly with NASA. And then I don't have to be a middleman as much. So our goals, of course, we want to communicate the timelines of available power and really try to accelerate those decisions for all lunar operations. Right? Everybody needs power. So our annual goal from last year, there's some words, but really the main thing was trying to figure out what's the right power in the right place at the right time. So really what that amounts to is figuring out what the scope of the possible is and the scope of what we actually need is. So we worked a lot to try to understand the capability areas that we needed to define and what exists out there so that we can meet those. And really, all of that is focused on connecting this power to the eventual user base. And one of the very first things that we figured out in figuring out how to connect is the actual connection is really important. And so, figuring out how we can make power systems which are interoperable and modular, as not just in those connections, but at every place where it would be advantageous to do so, it became pretty clear that we should spend more attention and discussion dedicated on this idea of interoperability and modularity. So James Mistandria, along with his team, Kristen Jeberek, has been taking this on already as a separate working group now, not just a subgroup. It's also, I take credit for it here, but it's really been through a lot of the other focus groups. I know Angela's focus group, Extreme Access, has also been really heavily involved in this, as well as many of the others. So the whole point is determine the systems that are appropriate to seal for this. I think we heard a really great overview of what interoperability means yesterday. I forget, there's a really great acronym, ADOPT, and I forget what the second one was, author last. So don't duplicate the wheel, figure out what's going on first. And that's what this working group is coming together for. Yes, they've already started their Telecons series, and they started with Chad Thrasher, who was on the panel yesterday. So some of the highlights over the last year, as you've heard before, we've had lots of Telecons, which are joint with other focus areas. We had one on the VSAT, which was with extreme environments and dust mitigation, as well as on rad hard electronics with extreme environments again. We had a power beaming workshop last summer. This was a really fun workshop. I encourage you to go back and look at the slides or the presentations from it. This was something that the community requested in late spring, and just a few months later, we were able to put together this workshop to address that need. So our monthly telecons, we have a lot of different themes. Generally, try to base those on what the community expresses they want to hear about. So we do that. We try to engage with the power users as well by participating in other focus groups and hearing about what excavation construction, what ISRU, what those levels are that are going to drive our development. So we have sort of an ad hoc approach to subgroups and special sessions. So I've listed there The topics that typically come together as subgroups, unsurprisingly, these are pretty aligned with the needs that John has presented in those envisioned futures. That's what we're trying to address, right? So here's some snippets of one of the last times our subgroups came together, identifying the topics and needs and interconnections between all of those different efforts, and really driving the way that we want to take our focus group. One of the things that we like to do is when we have some workshop planning or a MOSA group, we want to have a special session. So on the fly, we'll call those sessions as necessary. We had a session about a month ago to talk about what we want to do in that summer workshop. I was actually surprised. I had an idea for the scope of what I wanted to do for that workshop, and then it was actually split 50-50 between that idea and another idea, which I'll get to in just a moment. So it's really interesting to hear and be able to respond in a rapid way to those community needs. But these are generally the underlying technologies that enable the power capabilities, as John was talking about, that are needed for that sustained presence. So that summer workshop that's coming up, these are sort of the tentative sessions, trying to understand low temperature power and energy storage for the lunar surface. So we're going to try to be as inclusive as possible with the community needs. So hear from Jamie's group, Extreme Environments, on what those actual breakdown of that thermal environment actually is. We'll hear about some power needs during eclipse to get an idea of what those true power needs are. And then we'll talk about near-term solutions, probably a panel discussion or some technical talks. Also give an opportunity for those who have some advanced technologies to give talks. And then really the heart of the workshop I want to be this idea of collaborative system solutions. So we'll describe a given scenario and then have participants address that, and of course provide time for networking as well. So that's an easy way for you to get involved, is just drop into that meeting. So our goals over the next year, our priorities, the things that we're sort of refining into that goal. We want to understand how we can better encourage development of system-level solutions. This is, from one of the emerging themes of this entire workshop has been a lot of that system-level solutions and thinking across those boundaries. Thanks. So we'll also be trying to identify what we need to most in need of lunar surface demonstrations, critical milestones in terms of both time and functionality, and communicate those across the focus groups. And then I'll end with some overarching themes really quickly. I already mentioned this, but capabilities to enable these envisioned futures are definitely emerging. And there's a lot of interest in these cross-cutting issues towards system solutions. I'm personally very encouraged by this interest in interoperability, especially from stakeholders entirely independent sometimes of STMD. That's an indicator that I think we really want to work together to enable this robust and sustained lunar presence. There's a wide span in project needs and timelines, so we need to continue our communication to get convergence of those. And really, the Surface Power Focus Group, we exist to serve the community. So tell us what your needs are, and we'll do our best to address them. Email's there again, and I think we'll just finish by saying it is an amazing time to go to the moon together.
Thank you, Wes. We have one question here directed at you in particular. Wes, has internal combustion engines running on common rocket propellants like methane and oxygen been considered for high power density surface applications?
Right, so I saw this question earlier and I made a note in my little notebook to follow up on it. To my knowledge, it's not really in our gap closure. The scope of what is possible is beyond what I can currently imagine. So I'm very interested in hearing more about that.
Thank you. And one last question before we move on. Just stay up there. Don't go anywhere. And this is for the panel at large, I think. It was directed at Jamie, but anybody can answer if she is not ready. Is there an intent to create an all-inclusive environmental model to help industry design around to reduce barriers to entry for commercialization?
I think you're looking at the model, right? So anybody can come to our meetings, anybody can speak, and you have sort of unprecedented access to speak directly to, across stakeholders. So in our meetings, you'll have people, anybody who wants to attend and speak up, we will do our best to encourage that. Oh, environmental modeling? Okay.
Environmental model or modeling.
Okay, good. Then that's definitely a Jamie question.
Well, so, is this working? Yeah,
Inclusive.
I think environmental modeling as a whole, just, well, that sounds crazy. If we try to do everything at one time, I mean, it sounds amazing and crazy. But I will say, we spend a lot of time talking about modeling within our subgroups and our monthly, just because there's so many gaps we have in that area. And some is with the modeling, and some is with the data that goes into the modeling, right? That's where a lot of your uncertainty is gonna come from, which is why we need to test things, so we have better data to go into our models. You see how that dance works? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part. So if whoever asked that question, if you want to come to the subgroup, we would love to have you and talk more about it.
Okay, thank you. One last round of applause for our focus group leads.